He walked into the cafe drenched from the rain, shivering, his clothes torn and his eyes filled with defeat. Everyone turned away, everyone except her. She offered him a warm smile and a hot cup of coffee, even though she could barely afford one herself. But the next morning, when the same man walked back in wearing a designer suit and said the words, "I own this place," her world stopped. Before we dive into this unforgettable story of kindness, second chances, and the magic of humanity, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Hopeful Stories, where we share heart-touching true tales that remind you hope is never lost. It was one of those gray, cold mornings that seemed to mirror the heaviness in Lila's heart. The wind howled outside, carrying the scent of wet asphalt and lonely sidewalks. Inside Corner Bean Cafe, the aroma of fresh coffee couldn't quite drown out the sound of her tired sighs. She'd been working non-stop for months, saving for her mother's medical bills, barely scraping by, and living off instant noodles and endless shifts. Her hands trembled slightly as she wiped down the counter. Her paycheck was due in 3 days, but the bills were already due yesterday. Still, she greeted each customer with her warm, gentle smile, the kind that didn't cost a thing, even when everything else did. The cafe door jingled, and in stepped a man unlike the others. His coat was soaked, his hair tangled, and his shoes worn thin. He looked like life had forgotten him somewhere along the way. People nearby stared, whispering under their breath. One man moved his laptop away, afraid the stranger might come too close. "Excuse me," the homeless man said softly, his voice almost breaking. "May I just sit here for a bit? It's freezing outside." Lila looked up. Something in his voice, the quiet ache, the vulnerability, struck her. She saw not a beggar, but a soul fighting to stay human. "Of course," she said kindly. "Take any seat you like." He hesitated, then sat near the corner, his eyes darting toward the steaming cups of coffee on other tables. Lila approached, notebook in hand. "Can I get you something warm?" she asked. He lowered his gaze. "I don't have any money." "I'm sorry." For a second, Lila just stood there. The manager, a strict man named Tom, glared from the counter. "Lila," he warned quietly, "don't waste time on him. We're not a shelter," but Lila ignored him. "Coffee's on me," she said softly, smiling. "And maybe a sandwich, too." The man's eyes widened, glistening with disbelief. "You'd do that?" "Sure," she replied. "Everyone deserves a warm meal." She used what little tip money she had left and served him a hot coffee and a turkey sandwich. He ate slowly, savoring every bite like it was the first meal he'd had in days. When he finished, he stood and said, "Miss, I'll never forget this. You don't know what you've done." Then he left, disappearing into the rain as quietly as he'd come. That night, when Lila counted her tips, she realized she had barely enough to get home. But somehow she didn't feel regret. She went to sleep thinking of that man's grateful smile, a small light in her otherwise dark world. Little did she know, her kindness that rainy morning would change everything. Because the next day, the doorbell at Corner Bean Cafe would ring again, and her entire life would turn upside down. The next morning dawned brighter, with streaks of sunlight cutting through the cafe windows. Lila was cleaning tables when the bell above the door chimed again. She turned automatically, ready to greet another customer, and froze. Standing there was the same man from yesterday, only this time he looked completely different. His hair was trimmed, his beard gone, his clothes immaculate, a sharp navy suit, polished shoes, and a confident smile that radiated warmth. "Good morning, Lila," he said, his voice clear and calm. She blinked, confused. "Do I know you?" He chuckled softly. "You do. Yesterday you gave me coffee when I couldn't afford it." Her eyes widened. You were that man?" "Yes," he said. "But I wasn't just a homeless man. My name is Daniel Hartman, and I own this cafe." The cafe went silent. Even Tom, the manager, froze behind the counter, his jaw dropping. "I came here yesterday," Daniel continued, "disguised as someone who'd lost everything. I wanted to see how my staff treated people when no one was watching. And while some turned me away, you, Lila, saw me. You gave me dignity. You reminded me why I started this place, not for profit, but for people. Lila could barely speak. I didn't know. I was just doing what anyone should, Daniel smiled. But not everyone would. And that's why today I'm doing something for you. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out an envelope. Inside is a check. Enough to cover your mother's hospital bills and a little more. Tears streamed down Lila's cheeks. Sir, I can't accept this. Yes, you can, Daniel interrupted gently. Because kindness deserves to come back around. Tom tried to stammer an apology, but Daniel raised a hand. Lila will be the new cafe manager starting today. You can assist her, if she'll have you. The entire cafe erupted in applause. Customers smiled, some wiping away tears. Lila stood there, trembling, a mixture of joy, shock, and gratitude flooding her heart. When the day ended and she locked up the cafe, she glanced at the rain outside. Only now, it didn't look gray anymore. It shimmered, like silver threads of hope falling from the sky. She whispered softly, "You never know who's watching. So always choose kindness." And that's the story of Lila, a waitress who proved that one small act of kindness can change everything. If this story warmed your heart, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Hopeful Stories for more real, emotional stories that remind us that even in the darkest moments, a little kindness can light the way.